So, tank players have a lot to think about while they're playing this role, and while it might not be the most mechanically intensive role in the entire game, at least for most of the characters, it is so hard to pull off correctly, and I see so many tank players just not really doing everything the best. And I think a big problem is that there aren't way too many tank mains. I mean, there's a lot of people that are playing the role, that will fill the role, that will do their best, but if you're one of those players and you don't know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, or even if you're a tank main but you just want to get better, today I hopefully can help you guys by opening your eyes on some of the main big problems that you're doing that you should be able to hopefully fix after this video. With all that all said though, guys, let's get started. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about for you tank players is something that I guess you can't really like mechanically improve on again. There's not going to be way too many of those, but a thing that you really have to change in your mindset, and that is that you need to stop being so stuck up on your team's bad positioning, and you need to stop hoping and praying and asking for your team to always come to you to where the good positioning is. Because while yes, that's a good idea to have people come to where the best positioning on the map is, in a lot of situations, it's better for you to try to position well with them than for you to hope that they will position well with you. And I think that's something you do have to keep in mind, and here is what I'm going to say. If you have good positioning, but no one is playing behind it, and no one wants to position where you are going, and everyone's like on the right half of the map while you're pushing the left, you are essentially being worthless there. You are creating space for nobody but yourself. And sure, maybe you're going to get a pick by yourself, and maybe you have a support or one of the DPS following you, but really, if nobody's playing around you, look at where they're going, look at what they're trying to do, and try to play around them. Again, your positioning might not be as good as it could be, but I think in a lot of cases it's better to fortify your teammates' positions, especially if your first push just doesn't work at all and no one knows how to play around you. It's better to fortify your teammates and create space for them for what they want to do, instead of trying to create a game plan that you are just really stuck to. Because while again, that could be good on paper, with random teammates in a random game of solo queue, you know, it doesn't always work out, and a lot of times it's better to help your teammates out than to have your teammates try to help you out as a tank. Now, the second thing I'm going to say here that a lot of people do wrong is that a lot of people just try to play very defensively as tank, and they think, hey, I really can't get any kills, so I'm just going to keep walking back, and, you know, I'm not going to die at least, and, you know, maybe I'll give some people on the enemy team a bit of space, but it'll be fine. And then eventually what happens? Well, the enemy team just overcomes everyone on your team, they dive in, they kill you all, and we see this happening so much. And I guess that happens really a lot on defense, but even on offense, I see so many tank players that, you know, they're about to start a fight, but then they back off quite a bit, wait for like 40 seconds, then they're about to start a fight again, and then they back off. Really what I'm going to say here is that if you're playing tank, you do have to be probably a little bit more aggressive than you're used to. Because with a lot of the tanks, I mean, if you're playing aggressively, it's pretty easy for your DPS to play well, and it's pretty easy for your supports to play well. Now, of course, don't go up and kill yourself over and over again. Don't play so far up that your teammates can't help you, but pushing at the front of the cart, and maybe even a little bit past that, around corners, is a lot better for your team as far as space creation than pushing right next to your cart or right behind your cart. That's kind of the type of space I'm talking about here. Essentially, what you want to think about is the fact that you, as a tank, if you're playing aggressively, are creating a lot of disturban and a lot of space for your teammates to play with. And if you're creating a lot of space that you're forcing the enemy tanks back, well, that means that your DPS has a lot more room to breathe. And if your DPS has a lot more room to breathe, then that's going to be able to increase their damage output, most likely, make them a lot less stressed, so they're probably going to be able to hit a lot more shots. And as well with that, it'll stop the enemy divers from hopefully jumping on your supports. And that, I think, is a very important thing as well, because it'll keep your supports alive for longer, and you can keep going on like that. Overall, I think we've just all seen tank players that just sit back by themselves and aren't helping their team way too much, and really make sure you're not one of those players. Now, another thing I'm going to say right here that I didn't put on the list but does kind of attach to this is that make sure that you aren't a Winston player that jumps in by yourself without your teammates ever being ready for you to do it as well. I see that all the time. Being overly aggressive and super overly aggressive is obviously not a good idea if no one is even anywhere next to you, if your teammates really can't help you at all, and let's say the enemy team is completely set up, but your team isn't, then yeah, don't engage. Don't be offensive in that way, but instead just have slightly offensive positioning instead of pretty defensive positioning. I hope that you guys can kind of get what I was saying right there. Now, another thing I want to talk about here, which is, I guess, the third thing, and it's something that I've just been kind of finally learning about how it works, is armor. And as a tank, and every single tank in the game, except for Zarya and Hog, I guess, but, you know, they're a little different, with all the other tanks that have armor, realize how important armor is. And I think this is a very important thing that I just never really accepted. Armor is extremely powerful against most characters in the game, and especially against most of the tank shredders in the game. Armor essentially halves the damage of most of the tank shredders. And what that allows for you to do is to stay in a fight for a lot longer. And what I'm going to say here is that if you're playing tank, you want to make sure that you aren't engaging without your armor topped off, or at least pretty close to being topped off. Because let's say that someone's attacking you. Well, if you have armor, you're going to live probably 1 or 2 more shots, and that can really change between life and death. But I think the most important thing, other than just simply living longer in a regular 1v1, is the fact that when you're being healed with armor, the healing is still 60 health per second, so it's 60 armor per second. While the enemy damage is, still their normal, let's say, 100 damage per second, but it's being cut in half by the armor to around 50 to 60 or something around there. Well, as you can see, the healing is a lot more effective with armor because it's cutting almost all that damage away now. It's almost doubling your HP, or at least doubling your heals until they break through your armor with their team's help. And yeah, especially if you're getting healed with armor, that's when you can really go in. And I think if you're a Winston player or something like that, a Diva player, ask for your Zenyatta to give you the orb before every single engagement, because you'll go in, you'll take a little bit of damage, and it'll immediately start to be healed up. Your armor will be kicked into effect, and that again is something you always want to be looking forward to and be looking at. Your armor is an extremely important part of your kit, and especially with Brigitte coming out, I think it's something that you should try to really learn a lot about. Now, of course, against characters that just do a lot of burst impact damage, it isn't nearly as important, but for most of the people that can do a ton of damage to tanks, which is what you should really be worrying about, it definitely is. So keep your eye on that at all times. Look at your armor levels, not just your HP levels. Now, to the fourth thing I want to talk about, it's going to be that you guys need to stop underestimating your power and your potential to get kills. Now, as I was saying earlier with the Winston example, you shouldn't always go, like an ape and jump in by yourself and hope that you can get a solo kill, because, well, yes, sometimes you can, you won't always. But what I'm saying here is that you really need to realize that a lot of the tank characters in the game do have potential to get kills. You shouldn't overextend for them, but when there's a good chance, you can oftentimes take it as these roles. They do more damage than you probably think. And another thing I'm going to say right here is that if you are a tank player that's really stuck at low rank, realize that you don't always need great DPS to back you up, and you don't always need great DPS to win you that fight. If you can get a good engage and get a good kill by yourself, utilizing your armor, utilizing your burst, whatever it is, it could be the Diva burst, it could be the Winston, jump on them, melee, shoot them combo, it could be Reinhardt hitting a good fire strike into swiping at them twice. It could be a lot of things, but realize that you can do a lot by yourself. And even though you do apply a lot of space for your teammates and you do help them in a lot of ways, you apply crowd control, shields, all of that, there still is potential for getting kills in your kit. And a lot of the times I think people just kind of ignore that and just don't realize that they have potential to finish people off. And yeah, you really should be looking at that more, especially if you're playing someone like Diva. For myself personally, I was hard stuck at low diamond with Diva for a while, but then I realized that if I saw someone at the enemy team with like half HP, I should just always dive in there, kill them, then get out. I started to do that more, and I climbed to Masters in like 2 days. I think that really is an important, insight to remind yourself about. And so many of the tanks do so much damage, just realize that there is a lot of potential in your kit, and that you should be trying to use it the most you can. And in order to learn when to use it, just try to get kills in your games. Try to extend maybe a little bit more than you normally do, and try to just do stuff. And if it doesn't work, well then yeah, don't do it again. But if it does, well, you've learned something new to do, and you learned some new way to help carry your game other than just by itself, creating space, which is something that tanks just kind of do naturally. And now with the final tip I'm going to give here, and the final difference is that when you look at the best players in the game, oftentimes they aren't so obvious with their ult usage. And this is something I see that it's just so bad with so many tank players, because I know there are a lot of tank players that just don't really play their role and just kind of autopilot the role, which is fine. We do need flex tanks, that's fine. But I see so many of these flex tank players just walking straight up with the Reinhardt ult, extremely obviously because they're walking way past their team, way past the normal part where they'd be standing. They walk way up there, hope for an ult, walk up clearly, and then a lot of the times it just doesn't work because the enemy team is completely prepared. I see this happening so much with every single ult. People as tank mains just walk so far up, and with most roles you do, usually want to walk further up so you can hit the enemy team easier. But with DPS and with support, it's kind of harder to tell exactly what they're going to be doing because there's a lot more options, and normally they don't push up way too much by themselves. But, you know, there's flankers and everything, so it's kind of harder to tell what they're doing. With tank, though, it really is obvious. There's not way too much mobility for you to get in and to do much. And yeah, moreover, just think about the enemy's point of view, and if you're a Reinhardt that's just walking up by yourself, none of your teammates are really next to you, and you're just pushing up out of nowhere, I mean, yeah, from the enemy team's point of view, it's like you're going to use your ult. There's no other option. That's what you're going to be doing. So keep that in mind and try to be less obvious with your ultimate usage. Wait until the middle of a team fight. Wait until the team turns around to deal with your Genji. Wait until something else happens and then go for your ult. Just don't kind of randomly blindside it because you kind of want to use it because it just came up. That's not a great thing to do. And I guess if you do really want to go for that strategy, at least get a Lucio ult, or at least start a team fight, or at least get something like a Zenyatta ult that's moving in front of you that can take the enemy's attention away from them. Get something that can make your ultimate a little bit harder to see coming, because if you do that, your ultimates will gain a lot more value. And if your ultimates gain more value and are hitting more people, well, you're going to be doing a lot more as tanks, because that's one of the main things tanks can do to actually carry a game, get great ults, and a lot of you guys just aren't doing it the best. And I think mainly a lot of people are just being too obvious, being too easy to counter, and if you really focus on that, I think you really can climb quite easily with this role. But anyways, as always, guys, this has just been my own personal opinion about tanks. Last season, and I think the last 3 seasons, I've just been maining tank, maining Diva, Reinhardt, Orisa, all those characters. This season, I'm probably going to be changing to maining Brigitte and Mercy, Moira, while still playing a lot of tank as well. But I felt like I really could tell you guys some stuff that I see that it isn't too hard to improve on, that mainly is mindset-based stuff, but that you definitely can improve on. And if you have any of your own different opinions about what you might need to do or what other people really make huge mistakes on, I'd like to hear that down in the comment section down below. As well, if you made it all the way to this point in the video, say Nintendo Switch Gray Edition, because I don't know, it's what's on my table, and I always do this just to see if people got all the way, so that'd be pretty cool. And I'll give you maybe a little heart if you did that as well. As always though, guys, if you enjoyed, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button to see more videos like this in the future, and see videos about Season 10 Overwatch Competitive. With all that said though, guys, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day.